For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who want it until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious.
Violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups who are terrorizing the innocent, destroying jobs, hurting businesses, and burning down buildings. They are coming after me because I am fighting for you. That's what's happening.
Greetings, fellow thought criminals, and thank you for joining the Insurrection. I'm Michael Lauber, and tonight, Derek Evans can finally join the show as his authentic self.
What an honor. Oh my gosh. I am not Derek Evans. Oh my gosh. But what an honor to be filling in for him. I know he's having surgery, I guess, or something. So here you go, guys.
Now, Derek's just fine. He just had some things to take care of tonight. This is Sharona Bishop. And actually, we do have a fantastic show and a great guest lineup for tonight. Before we bring in our guest, though, Sharona, if you could kind of give our audience a little background on who you are and what brought you to the forefront in the culture war here.
Well, Michael, thank you for inviting me to be on here with you. I appreciate you so much and all the great work that you are doing personally, things people don't see, all the work you do behind the scenes. Thank you for everything. And I tell you what, being here in Derek's place is such an honor. He's such an incredible patriot, such a great American. So thank you for the invitation tonight. I actually, I was a homeschooling mom. I was fighting, of course, the culture war, trying to understand how it is all these people are elected and do nothing to protect our children in public school. They get dumber. They don't learn more. 20%, efficient in reading, math, and writing, basic skills that they're supposed to be picking up in school, but they're pushing a woke agenda. So we were engaged in elections. We were working with candidates, just having an incredible time in the state of Colorado, the People's Republic thereof, governed by the worst governor in the state of in the union, the one and only. Blue Shoes himself, Jared Polis. He's the first openly gay governor who has been radically and aggressively going after our children to alienate them from their parents. Colorado is a state where kids 12 years old and up do get to have pharmaceuticals provided to them by teachers in their school buildings, by counselors who are not even official. It's just unbelievable and disgusting. So all of that, I was just a mom who decided I'd really had enough. I'm tired of leaving things to elected officials who absolutely do nothing. They don't take their oath seriously. They don't honor the supreme law, and they certainly don't honor you or I and our personal rights. So all of that happened, and eventually on November 16th, 2021, the FBI raided our home. That was 3 years ago now. They took our stuff. They took our sense of security. They terrorized my family. They pulled my daughter up and down the stairs by her hoodie, an 18-year-old young girl. They taught my two little boys more about government and how awful and how bad it possibly can be. The founders were absolutely correct. They're a necessary evil than I ever could have done in any of our lessons. So I'm grateful at this point, but the weaponization of the federal government is here. I was a regular, everyday mother who just would not stop talking, and they don't like that. They don't want you to expose them. They don't want you to get on here and talk about them, and they'll do anything they can to shut you up. So here we are 3 years later, no charges. There never will be any. And our stuff, we still don't have our stuff back. We can't get the footage from our raid. But poor Peter Navarro, gosh, we got to see him in his underwear, right, on his front step less than a day or two later. These people are vile. And you're going to demonstrate tonight in our conversations tonight. We're really going to get to see up close and personal how bad the deep state is, how infiltrated we are by these communists who are trying to destroy America. And I think for me, especially, I always saw it as they, them. My husband was in criminal justice for 24 years. I know what a criminal looks like. I'm not one. My husband is not one. All of these mothers and fathers across the country that are being terrorized, put on domestic terrorist watch lists, people from January 6th who were there to peacefully protest, people who are attending their public meetings with county commissioners and city council members and then being escorted to jail or finding themselves in all kinds of situations they never imagined. This is not what's supposed to happen in America. The weaponization is here, and we're going to keep calling it out. So I appreciate you letting me just share a little bit about that.
Well, thank you. And that's exactly what brings our guest here tonight, too, is like a lot of us, he was sick and tired of seeing what was happening watching our country slowly slip away. He went to D.C. to protest on January 6th, and his life's never been the same since. Tim Hale, thank you for joining us tonight. And if you could, before we kind of dig in, could you give us a little bit of your background, and then we're going to kind of dig into your story, and then we've got a few other things to cover after that.
Sure thing. Hey, thank you for having me on tonight. I appreciate it. Name is Tim Hale. I'm a January 6th defendant, still technically. New Jersey born and raised. I was a member of the U.S. Army as well as a naval weapons contractor before January 6th, and was a union rep and a bit of a troll. But
good
after January 6th, I'm now a felon. I was entrapped by the FBI. They had my roommate wear a wire. And I have a lot to say about what actually happened that day, who a lot of the bad actors were, and you can take it from there.
I wanted just to pause for a second too, just so people understand who are listening, because you kind of skimmed past this very quickly, Tim. I know you're not a boaster, and it's not a boast, but you did serve our country honorably for more than 12 years. And I think that deserves a pause for a moment there. When you showed up at the Capitol, you went in your suit and tie to honor this country. And I think that deserves a moment for people to really think about as we hear your testimony tonight. There's a lot of conversation going on in the Twitter world and in the J6 movement right now about who is good and who is not good, or who has bad motives and bad intentions. And so I really want people to understand who you are. You had a very challenging upbringing, and you made something of yourself, and you chose to do what was right. You chose to pursue honorable things. And I really want people to know that about you.
Well, thanks. You're nice too.
Always deflecting.
Yeah.
So you and I, we got to know each other, Michael, and I don't want to step on your toes, but Tim and I got to know each other. Yeah, I went to the January 6th event that Patriot Freedom Project put on, and that was because I wanted to meet these families that were left behind, as we have fathers going into prison or still sitting in pretrial prison, which is just absolutely unheard of, by the way. And I wanted to meet them all to just kind of see where I was going to fit into this. As a mother, I'm not sure exactly what I was going to be able to do and what I was going to be able to offer. But as a commentator, I definitely wanted to be sharing your guys' stories. And you and I got to sit and talk for a few hours. And it was incredibly eye-opening. I went there with some suspicions of those who are in the movement, who seem to be the face, or wanting to be the face of the movement. But as all these videos are being released, as the January 6th footage is all being released, and those who've been holding on to their videos are now releasing them to the public, it is demanding that we stop and take a look at those who have tried to capitalize, and I do mean capitalize financially, on what happened to people like you and those other innocent people on that day. Rebecca Lavrance, the grandmother who is waiting for her sentencing right now. Like, there were really people there who just showed up to peacefully assemble and support our president. And then there were those who went to do other things. So I appreciate that time we've had. It's been eye-opening to me, and it's helped me to kind of figure out what really matters. And that is the innocent Americans who are demonstrating their First Amendment protections, just as I was doing. I have the right to run my mouth as much as I want. You have the right to peacefully assemble outside of the Capitol and be there to witness a speech or whatever it was you wanted to do that day. You have that right, but they've tried to strip that from us. So it's been a pleasure to get to know you and to hear your story and to hear the other side of things. So I want people to hear that tonight.
Well, great. I absolutely appreciate the opportunity to speak to anybody who is actually willing to hear the other side of all the narratives of the past 3
Yeah.
years. And I'll just say, yeah, it is strange. There's a lot of people are not releasing the video they have. We're not just talking about the government. Like, the first thing I did when I got out was try to release what little discovery I was able to get, and I think it's pretty eye opening. I mean, look, I'm not an angel, but I mean, look, at the end of the day, when you look at the video that was on my phone, it's very clear there was no plan, there was no
Yeah.
mission. People meandered from the ellipse. People at the ellipse are even here. You can hear in the background someone saying there's some kind of a march going on. I mean, people went to the Capitol not expecting, really, like, not even knowing what to expect. And they didn't know that before they showed up, Ray Epps and a bunch of people knocked barriers over. And so, and look, it's not just Ray Epps. There's other people involved in all this, but
Of
at the
course.
end of the day, when I show up, you can see people are chanting USA. We're singing God Bless America. And it's just like, I've never heard of an insurrection where people are chanting, their, like, singing the national anthem. It's just bizarre. And so
Yeah.
you see, as you look at the like the timeline from each video, gradually things get more aggressive because there are agitators at the front, and I'm not aware of this, and the cops are really overreacting and they're escalating. Some of it's incompetence, some of it's malicious. But what this ends up doing is creating a snowball effect. And people don't know this side of the story. They've seen the same, like, 30-second clip of a window getting broken in for 3 years,
Yeah.
or something happening to an officer, but they don't see the buildup to that. And I promise
Mhm.
you, I'd never been on the Capitol grounds before then. When you're there, you can't see nothing really. If you're in the back, you have no idea what's happening at the front. So as you move forward or whatever, you got. I mean, I got the impression that the protesters were being attacked by the police, and
Yes.
to an extent, that's true. But nobody
Mhm.
wants to consider, like, the perspective on this. The mens rea, the mindset of the people there was not insurrection. And anybody who keeps pushing the narrative 3 years later, oh, I was there for Revolution 1776. It's like, 1776 was 1776. Actually, you're pushing the insurrection narrative wrapped in the American flag. That's a
Yes.
trap. It's a trap. We need
Mhm.
to watch out for that. There's a select few, but there are people who are still doing that. And it's like, you're going to
Mhm.
sabotage other defendants, and you're going to sabotage President Trump. And it's like, I'm just tired of that. My greatest regret isn't losing 3 years of my life. It's being used as a weapon against President Trump.
Well,
I don't
yeah.
even know what else to
Yeah.
say about that. It's just like, we need to, like, there are all these narratives. There's no consistent narrative, though, because you have agitators who are trying to control everything, and they're trying to basically make the Democrats' case for them.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
I ain't about
Well,
that. I wasn't there for a
well,
revolution. I love the founding fathers. I was not there for a revolution. I was there for a speech. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I'm saying? Like, they tried to frame
Mhm.
everybody as this extremist, that extremist. Most people were just normies who showed up to, probably, for me, my first Trump speech ever. I'd never been there. I thought it was going to be either his last speech as president, or it might have been the beginning of his next presidency. But it was going to be a
yeah.
historic event, but not that kind of historic event. I didn't go.
Listen, I wanted to be there at January 6th. My husband and I, we would have been there, but we had just had our FBI raid and we were told it wasn't smart for us to be in DC because they could do anything they wanted to us there. We didn't have any protection. So we
Yeah.
wanted to be there for this historic moment. We definitely, we were anticipating Mike Pence doing the right thing, recalling the electors. Like, I was just looking and watching for victory that day on the side of the American people and on the side of the Constitution. So I watched on Twitter. I was watching the videos that were coming in with the anticipation that we were going to get our country back because of the law, not because of guns blazing in an insurrection. It didn't even cross my mind because that's just not how we've been. We know that we have to use the law in order to win. That's how we're going to win, is by the law. So I'm with you. I really didn't. I just never imagined that anything like this would happen, where people would fall into this trap. So it's been alarming to hear this ongoing rhetoric, as you mentioned. And I want you to kind of walk us down that path in just a second. But for people who don't know, you spent 3 years and you in between the jails, and then when you were sentenced and in prison, you spent 3 years in this system. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like?
Sure. I spent approximately 2 years give or take, in the DC jail. And then I spent about a year or so on Fort Dix prison, or FCI Fort Dix here in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Each is, I mean, they're different environments for different reasons. Prison, I mean, look, I'm not like I was in a low security prison, so I mean, it's like on the one hand, for some people it was Candyland. For other people it was like torture, because people can do whatever they want there. But it was very different than the DC jail. But the DC jail, and I'm going to say something controversial for the January 6th community. One of the worst things about the DC jail was people in there. And the reason is, like, you had a significant amount of agitators in there with you, posing as Trump supporters and trying to sabotage people's cases. At like the first year, yeah, it was awful. You were in solitary confinement, whether it was 23-1 or whether it was 22-2. The guards thought we were all white supremacists. They hated us. They hated Trump supporters, especially because a lot of them were natives. And so, like, they took it kind of personally. But over time, like, they did mellow out. And a lot of them, like, you had one dude who was there all the time. Like, he would do double shifts because he knew it was a cool pod to be in. Because at the end of the day, these dudes would sleep for most of the jail, because DC's not right. All right. Most of the pods in there, you had, like, the cops are protected by these desks that are wrapped in this giant plastic bubble. All right. For their protection. In our pod, it was just a mahogany desk out in the open. The cops slept there at their desk. They got overtime there. They didn't care. They were perfectly, like, they felt perfectly safe there. Right. And it's important. One thing I'll say, because I've heard, I think Scott Fairland mentioned this once, but I don't think this gets mentioned enough. I mentioned it in I think maybe 2 interviews. They knew we would be there. The guards admitted that they cleared the jail out for us 2 weeks before January 6th.
What?
What?
We weren't in. So, all right. Okay. You have the DC jail, and it's divided into 2 components. You have CDF, which is Central Detention Facility. That's the main area. And then you have CTF, the Central Treatment Facility. Think about that word, treatment. You'd think, like, old people would. It was a madhouse. It was a freaking an insane asylum. It's like you go in there and there's like there's feces and hair clumps jammed into the corners throughout the cells. They cleared it out for us, but not well enough for humans to actually to live in there.
Of course.
So I always joke that it was a cross between a mental asylum and an FBI field office. They didn't have. Yeah, I mean, they didn't have camera. They had one camera, but they didn't really need cameras because they had eyes everywhere, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Of course.
It was a psyop within a psyop. Now, initially, and again, this is controversial because you're not supposed to say anything bad inside the January 6th community that can make it. Let me tell you something. I didn't get to do interviews for 3 years straight when I was locked up. Most people did not.
Okay.
I had hit pieces being written about me by other inmates who were doing interviews all day, every day. Now, I don't know how that works. I mean, I do. It's rhetorical, but so
what happened? You did give one interview, right?
I mean, I think I did one on the radio, or maybe even a couple. But
what happened? What happens to people in these jails who are caught doing these interviews?
Oh, so okay. So this was an accident. I was in prison on Fort Dix, and I didn't know there was going to be a 3-way phone call. And I immediately was like, and they throw you in the SHU, which is a special housing unit, the hole. Yeah. I had been in no trouble when I was in the DC jail. I was never thrown in the hole at all. I never got written up once. The BOP has very, very stringent rules about that kind of stuff. Now, at the end of the day, they threw the charge out, but I still had to sit for a week in a tuberculosis-filled cell. But people don't really get to do the stuff in prison that they think they can do on the outside. So you got all these dudes who are in jail, and I'm not talking smack. I understand people want to get their story out, but they go into prison thinking it's not prison. You will get a street charge theoretically because it's unauthorized access to the public. You can get in trouble for that. So when people are doing all these interviews from a BOP facility, that's really strange. You need to get like written permission. Usually like a warden has to sign off for any kind of interviews and stuff like that. And phone calls are usually supposed to be 15 minutes. And for me, again, I could be wrong. It might be different throughout the BOP. For me, you get a phone call, you got to wait an hour before you can use the phone again. Even if you use 2 minutes and you're like, oh, you don't get the rest of that. Like, you can't save that. You got to do it all over again. All right.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of weird how there are like these marathon spaces that are being done, these marathon interviews.
Yeah.
It's just,
it is
what
certain
it is.
people have access and everybody else gets normal treatment, which, again, I do understand. We're talking about a prison system. You don't want inmates with access to cell phones all the time, able to call, threaten victims, able to do other illicit activity from within the jail. We don't want to turn into freaking Colombia or wherever else. But the fact of the matter is there's certain people that seem to have a different level of access than your normal prisoner. And again, you guys are also being specifically targeted as J6 defendants, as you alluded to earlier. They spread rumors that you're all a bunch of white supremacists, racist, sexist, bigot, homophobes. And that sets a certain tone for you guys and for the other inmates, for the guards, for everyone else. They want you guys specifically targeted, especially when you're sent out to other facilities. Once you're actually have been sentenced and you're sent to, Milan or New Jersey or wherever, Fort Dix, they want that reputation to follow you and can make life very dangerous for you while you're serving the time.
And it does follow you by paperwork, because the BOP, you get what's called you have what's called an STG file, or security threat group. And even if you don't have that, at the end of the day, like, you're probably, again, this might not be universal, but usually, whether you know it or not, you have what's called an intense monitoring program. So they're really, really looking, not just monitoring your phone calls. They're looking for you on the internet.
Right.
They're looking for you, especially, if you are, like, we're high profile as it is, but if you're a kind of person who's doing interviews nonstop, you're really high profile. There's no way they don't know.
Right. Running nonprofit organizations, running multiple media businesses,
bouncing calls through the Philippines. Yeah.
Right. With three-way calls. I want to, before we dive into that, because I know we're going to spend some time on that tonight, we're going to ask the questions that should have been asked in the 2 interviews that happened in the last 48 hours. Or 24 hours. We're going to ask those questions since they didn't. It got so bad in there with particular people that you wrote an appeal to cooperation and solidarity within the cell, within the pod. Can you talk a little bit about what happened that it was getting so bad, even though the crew was so great that the officers felt safe to be in there? What was causing all of the disruption that was happening between the J6 defendants in the DC pod?
Well, I'll start by saying the reason I was trusted to write that was because I was a union rep. And in my eyes, in my heart, I was thinking that if maybe I would go back to that life. And so in my heart, I still was a union rep. So, I believe when you're in a union, you really have to advocate for everyone, even the people who aren't really, so
correct. Yeah.
There are individuals who, even if I wasn't the biggest fan of, I didn't want them getting thrown in the hole. I didn't want them sabotaging their cases. I didn't want them getting hurt. And I didn't want them spreading dissent. And I also, frankly, the idea of unity is a nice idea.
Mm-hmm.
Division is usually not a good thing. And so at the start, even though I knew there were bad actors, I still really tried to get people to just chill and okay, you don't like that guy, just go over there and don't deal with them. And it worked for a little bit. But as to the question, why did I have to literally write a constitution for the DC jail? And the reason is you had agitators who were constantly causing division, who were constantly inciting fights, who were constantly inciting riots, who were constantly getting us locked down. And this is a period, I'm trying to think of this is back when we're still doing 23-1. So we've got an hour out of our cell. That's phone call, shower, breathe, and so the idea that you're going to get someone locked down, you don't open back up typically. I mean, later on, if there was a confrontation or whatever, and they locked us down for a little bit, they deal with who actually was behind it. And then maybe they'd let people out later on. Because things, again, transparency here, the conditions in the jail did improve over time. I don't believe in atrocity propaganda. And so we all look bad if we lie about what the conditions were. All right. They were
Sure.
really bad, and they're not great now, but they did improve over time. So I want to make people understand, like, when I left there, people were not still in solitary 23-1. There was like a while when like the Omicron came back, they locked us down. It was a whole nother thing, but
yeah,
the conditions improved. But the more time you had out of your cell, that's when you started realizing who people actually were, because people started like thinking, oh, I mean, it just is what it is. You have more exposure to people, and you start, recognizing their idiosyncrasies, and you start realizing their real motivations. And
yes,
people get to, because of the nature of the pod and who was in there, people get a little too comfortable and they start slipping up. But as for that, yeah, I mean, I wrote that because there were people who were constantly causing problems for everybody else, and people really wanted to, not be nice to those people. And even if I didn't like those people, I didn't want to see them, turn into a puddle. All right.
One of the things on here that you wrote in this Constitution said, courtesy is essential in a shared living space. I will take into consideration the status of other inmates. I won't interrupt communication between other inmates and their loved ones, nor deprive them of rest. This was the part of the Constitution that was written for all the cellmates to sign. What prompted that particular one? I will not deprive them of rest or interrupt the inmates and their loved ones. What was going on with that?
So when someone causes a riot and you get the jail lockdown, you don't get to use the phone to talk to your family. And there's only 4 phones. So in general, like best case scenario, 4 people can be on the phone at a time. If you have over 20 people and you only have an hour out or hour increments, if you get locked down really early, guess what's not going to happen for everybody else? They're not going to be able to talk to their family. And you're probably not going to get access to a communication tablet so you can send them a message. You're not going to be able to shower. And not for nothing, there are instances where someone might be resting. And if you're extremely loud and obnoxious and you're screaming and you're yelling Braveheart speeches, people aren't going to be able to sleep. And it's like, and hey, maybe if you're a cellmate with someone, we didn't really have cellmates in DC, but let's say you're a cellmate in Virginia with someone in Northern Neck, Virginia, if you're in the Warsaw jail. If someone's your cellmate and you're talking their ear off till 3 o'clock in the morning, confessing that stuff you probably think they're going to forget about, that person's not going to be able to sleep for the night. And so there's a lot of inconsiderate things that went on. And so it was a necessity to try to keep the peace, to point out like, okay, this, you got to stop that. Put your name on the thing. And there was universal like agreement about that, except for, a couple of people who kind of had to be, pushed to it because they wanted to be in charge of us. They wanted to be these carnival barkers, and they wanted to agitate. And like, no matter what you think about January 6th, whether I'm innocent, all right, I'll take responsibility. I did this, I didn't do that. Whatever the case may be for anyone's case, everybody wants to go home to their family. Yeah. Some people wanted to be famous for being political prisoners. That's a weird thing to want to be famous for. I mean, I say, like, I'm just some jerk off from New Jersey. I'm not famous. I don't want to be a celebrity. I didn't go there for that. And so, you have people whose lives have been overturned. They've lost their entire identity, essentially, their livelihood, everything they built in their lives. But then you got some people who've been doing interviews for 3 years straight to try to make themselves be this messianic figure. And it's like, this is really weird. And most people aren't about that. Most people want to get back to their families, whether they go to trial hoping for the best or whether they take a plea hoping for the best. Most of those guys in there were good dudes. They had families. They wanted to get back to their lives.
Jose Padilla. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
I want to go back to something you said a minute ago about the tablets that you brought this up. So what kind of access did you guys actually have to tablets and other electronic devices while you're there in the DC Gulag or in other prisons for that matter, any other jails or prisons that you might have been sent to? Because there seems to be certain people that have just an exceptional level of access online or in communications in general. And even if you did have access to one of these tablets, how locked down were they? Is this something that you could, through an approved email account, send an email back and forth to family, or could you get on, Twitter and make 100 posts? What kind of access did you have with these devices?
Right. So I'll say that it seems to be like this is a new thing. I didn't know that they had tablets when I got first arrested. So when I ended up in like the Essex County, like the Newark jail here in Jersey, they I mean there were like a couple tablets. You could actually make phone calls on those because it was a jail technically. Like
Sure.
they allowed people to communicate locally.
Okay.
But you couldn't go on the internet and stuff like that. That's like that clearly is a security issue. But when you got to the DC jail, you did not have that. You had especially because of the contracts they have. They basically just had this like this black brick. It was called an entertainment tablet, and you paid money to be able to listen to like some music, or you could send like a texts. It was essentially kind of like emails that you would send through this app called Getting Out. But you did not have internet access. You didn't have that. You couldn't send real emails. You couldn't make phone calls. Eventually, this has happened after I left the DC jail. Eventually, they got like some kind of an upgrade where you could make phone calls. This is what I've heard. I'm not a witness to this. I believe this is true. But all that stuff is monitored, so you can't just I'm gonna get a hookup with the New York Times. Like I don't really think that's how that's supposed to work. And keep in mind also the messages as well. All of that is monitored by the DC DOC, the Department of Corrections. So your communications are not confidential. Your phone calls are all monitored. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not as free as you might think. Now, when I went to prison, as an aside, you did have these kind of crappy little tablets that you could like buy movies for, but you couldn't use the internet. It completely goes against the concept of detention, whether pretrial detention or incarceration or whatever. It makes absolutely no sense.
Well, Michael, I'm taking your lead. Are we ready?
Yeah.
I feel like we're playing Bandit and we're like, turn that valve, turn that one.
Yeah, well, I think both of us have a lot of questions that need answered here, and there's limited opportunity for that. But maybe I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I want to go ahead and play a video because this is kind of going to get us deep into where this whole conversation's going, what we're kind of all dancing around right now. This is a mutual friend of all of ours, Kyle Seraphin, through another mutual friend, Sean Witzman.
Guilty of this. There are probably others. I don't know of all of them, but I know Jake Lang has called me from jail. Do you know how many people can call me from jail on a non-recorded line? None of them. They've never done that to me. It's weird. I get text messages from him. So does Steve Friend. Anybody that's got a public face is getting messages from this guy. I've had dozens of you reach out on DM. And yeah, it's a lot of you have reached out and said, this dude is doing something that nobody else does. He's known as Jake the Snake or Snake Lang for those of us that deal with him, including my friend Sean Witzman, who's dealt with him quite a bit. He was working at Gateway Pundit, and any negative statement about Jake Lang will get you kicked out of Gateway Pundit. That was a stream of income from my friend Sean. He's no longer at Gateway Pundit because Gateway Pundit makes money on Jake Lang, from everything I can tell. They run his podcast. This is Shipwreck Crew, also known as Bill Shipley, saying, all of you, Jake Lang has not had a trial by his choice. Not all J6ers are equal, and that's why we talk about nuance. That's why guys like Steve Baker come on here and talk about the truth. He's asked for his trial to be delayed pending the outcome in Fisher. Fisher is the Supreme Court decision for the 1512 count. His case before Judge Nichols in the 1512 count against him was dismissed. The government appealed the dismissal, which paused the case. The case has remained paused with Lang's agreement. He is agreeing to stay in jail while the 1512 issue has been appealed in court. Why is he okay with this? Because he knows he's getting convicted on multiple other counts. The video evidence against him is overwhelming. The video evidence is that he showed up with a bat, that he rushed a police line, and he tried to hit police with a bat. I've said this many times. I will continue to say this. If you were involved in physical violence that you initiated against law enforcement on January 6th, you belong in jail, just like the people from Antifa did in 2020. Just because they did not play that game fairly and just because DOJ did not go after them doesn't mean people who came up to cops with a bat don't need to go to jail. You're garbage. Lang is garbage.
Exactly. You don't excuse bad behavior by pointing to more bad behavior. And there's very clearly a lot of things around Lang that don't add up. And we're not even talking about all the other grifting and other stuff, because for those of you guys that don't know, is Blessed News. I know for a fact he does not have permission from a lot of those shows that are up there. He's posting as part of his alleged network. I'm only going to name a few names, but I know there's plenty of other people that have not given him permission. I know that Annie Cyrus has not given him permission, Lou Dobbs, Emerald Robinson, and there are numerous others, but I haven't talked to them, so I don't want to throw their names out there. But a lot of the programming that he's up there, portraying as his own and making, charging monthly fees on, getting membership fees for people to watch this network. It's all content he's lifting. He was stealing this show. He was taking Derek and I's stuff. We told him numerous times to stop lifting our content, putting it on Blessed TV, but he still continued to do it. And just like Kyle said, I got a text from this guy, from Jake Lang, at 4 a.m. a few days ago. I don't know why this guy is still sending me messages after numerous times telling me, I don't want anything to do with Blessed. That's a nightmare. And then I didn't want to get inserted in all this stuff with, various J6 defendants and other people and all the infighting and all that. I just want what's best for everybody. And I know there's always going to be some people that can't agree on things, but anybody that's doing something positive, I want to be there to support. And anybody that's doing something negative or dangerous, I want to be able to warn others so they don't fall into this trap. Sorry, I probably took all the oxygen in the room there for a minute. But Tim,
no,
sorry,
Tim,
go ahead.
Jake's signature is on this Constitution that you wrote. So were you in there with him?
Yeah, he had to be the last. He basically was the last person there. There's 2 other signatures that were there as witnesses. I drafted it. It was delivered, and he had, yeah. So here's something, and I think that there's nuance here. So when it comes to, I don't want to get on a tangent about this. With regards to what Seraphin said, I agree in general. I do think people were entrapped. And so in that regard, I don't think that people should be condemned based on the nature of their charges, but rather on the nature of their intent. And I'm sure he probably agree with that if we actually had a deeper conversation about that, but irrelevant. Not everybody who was there for the same reasons, no matter what, yes, whether they had a misdemeanor or a felony, assaults, nonviolent, in the building, on the grounds, went to trial, took a plea. I think all that's actually irrelevant. I think what matters is why people were there. I think what matters is the intent. And I think that even if you were there, there are some people who look, there's no way to get around it. There are cooperating witnesses. There are people testifying against their co-defendants. They're snitches. It's not like I'm sorry to be like Jersey here, but like, bro, there's snitches throughout this. Nobody wants to say it. And it's like for years, it's like you're the bad guy if you say it, because people want like, oh, it's unity. It's like there would be unity if we were all on the same side. But, it's like, and so you use the word infighting. I get it. But from the inside perspective of what I witnessed in there, it wasn't infighting. It was you saw what I wrote. Like I tried. I got stabbed in the back so many times, sticking my neck out for people.
By Jake Lang?
Not just him, his whole cabal. We literally called them the cabal. It was him, Nate DeGrave, Ronald Sandlin, Troy Smocks, all these people who won. This is the bizarre thing too. Because okay, be a snitch, be a grifter, but don't be a lying, don't be a snitching grifter. Like we used to call it snitching and grifting. It's bizarre. People want to be rewarded for destroying people's career. Like Troy Smocks wanted me to manipulate Patriot Freedom Project into giving him an action figure collection, like a line of action figures, a book deal, and all this stuff. And I'm like, you're trying to testify against Guy Reffitt. You're trying to sabotage the Oath Keepers. Why the hell? And I'm just like, and you say this, and people are just like,
do you think they just didn't really grasp the gravity of the situation they were in?
They knew.
How do you know the difference? Tell me the difference between someone who's just an idiot, criminal mind mentality, kind of that deviant mentality, and someone who's literally there getting information and giving it back to the federal government.
Because, okay, we'll take Guy Reffitt. You can ask his wife. You can ask Guy. I have written statements from Guy, like his own defense. They got confirmation that Troy Smocks was trying to testify against him. He volunteered, actually. But in reality, let's keep it real. He's a career criminal. Of course, he was picked up for that. I don't believe for one second that the colonel is not a colonel, that he just got picked up for interstate threats or whatever. He was a CHS. And you could tell from the very beginning, not just with his fake story that he was a colonel, which he's not. Every veteran can figure it out from the beginning, just because he didn't know anything. Very obvious. He would always watch Guy Reffitt. He would always stalk people. And he would always push whatever QAnon nonsense. and then he would try to basically encourage people to say stuff about killing politicians. It's very obvious. And when it comes, I mean, like, not for nothing, hi, I'm a colonel. He literally introduces himself as an Army colonel. Years after he's outed and he's released, then he's going on, and I don't hold this against Cowboy Logic, but he goes on Cowboy Logic and then he lies to them and tells them, I never said I was a colonel. That was my nickname when I played baseball. I'm like, bro, you said you served in Korea. You told Jess Watkins that you were, like, you literally would copy all her terminology from the military. And then you told Jeff McKellop you were in his unit. This is real. And it sounds insane because I'm not joking when I say FBI field office mixed with an insane asylum. It was like Groundhog's Day. You're not you just turn it off. And it's just like, I'm saying, like, gaslighting to the Supreme. Like, you're just not supposed to remember that they just did the thing they just did. It's like, it's real.
Well, this kind of gets to something. So do you think there was anybody that was specifically inserted by the DOJ or FBI, whoever, into this pod with everybody to kind of serve their purposes? That, maybe they weren't even actually there on January 6th. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But do you think there was anybody inserted or maybe turned that was there specifically to instigate problems, or even, I guess just help the feds make their case against all of you?
Yeah, how much time he got? I mean, I mentioned Troy Smocks. He wasn't at the Capitol. He just appeared in Grady County with Guy Reffitt and Ryan Nichols or whatever. So there's that. But you have Brian Mock, who, and granted, he was at the Capitol, but he literally wrote a 40-page report blaming his assaults on the cops on another defendant in the jail with us. It wasn't even a co-defendant. It was Pete Schwartz, and Pete Schwartz ended up getting 14 years because of his criminal record. And it was really because he fought the people who were snitching on his case. And of course, Brian Mock got 3 years. Actually, I think it was like 30 months. I don't remember exactly. It's totally irrelevant. The guy wrote a 40-page report that he was going to send to the court, blaming Pete Schwartz. And it's like, bro, that's the most. That's not
but is that a character flaw? Is that like a character deficit, or is that someone who's been pinched literally and is there? That's what we're getting at, because the last 24 hours have all been about, is Jake Lang a Fed asset? Like, is he a
well, I mean, he is. He's a CHS. He's not a Fed. Let's be very clear. He's an idiot. He is not smart enough to be a Fed. I am not. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm that guy. But he's really he's a preacher. He's a theologian. He's a revolutionary. He's whatever. I mean, but look.
Yeah, whatever hat he needs to wear at the time. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Today he's a rabbi. Next week he's a priest. This week he started his own cult. Literally, he did. No, he's not smart enough, but he is a CHS. There was a time he left his you actually got a second tablet. It was a legal tablet. And so you could communicate with people on your legal team, whatever. He left a message out on his tablet, the idiot, saying that he was working with the prosecutor. He's an idiot. You
saw that message that he put on the tablet saying he was working with the prosecutor?
Yeah, he actually left it on the clipboard because, like, you copy and paste. The way these tablets worked is that if you wrote something, you could copy it and like cut it or whatever. But if you don't erase the clipboard, it stays in there. You could paste whatever was in there last time before, even if someone logged in after. It doesn't matter. I walked up on him, saying stuff on the phone a few times, and it's funny because here's a tell, right? They always have a tell. Here's a tell. If you're in jail or prison and you're on the phone all day, one, you can't separate yourself from you can't adapt your situation, so you can't separate yourself from the outside world, and there's a high probability. Two, you're cooperating, and again, it's like people don't want to fling mud, and I get that. But as for someone who, I got twice my sentencing guidelines. I should have been out with time served at 20 months. I ended up getting 4 years, and thank God Trump signed the First Step Act, or I could have still been in prison. All right, but these guys were trying to sabotage my case the whole time, and so I'm sorry, I don't have sympathy. This dude, people are going to find out eventually, but what I'd rather happen before he sabotages the president. So
And we're going to get there from it. The reason I'm being so aggressive about this, and you understand this, is because you've got, great organizations, Gateway Pundit, the Hoffs have been fully vested in him, Professor Clements. I mean, the general just did a Twitter space with him the other night, General Flynn. You have really big people in the conservative movement who have really come along and allowed Jake Lang to be the face of the J6 movement. They are raising a lot of money. We talked about that in the 24-hour, this last 24 hours of Jake Lang going on to Vivo and then going on to George today, talking about how they're so transparent and everything's out there for them to see. They've raised a lot of money. I was just looking at one of the text messages he sent to me on February 19th that said, we have a political prisoner booth and we're raising money. They had a $500,000 match from Patrick Byrne. I don't know if that's true or not. It's just what he texted me. I have no idea. And all of these articles on the same number, constantly texting me for months and months and months, and doing that same thing to conservative people, all over the country. So he's become the face of this movement, and he's become the face of January 6th. And what we're saying, or what I'm getting at, is that to make this claim that he has been a grifter, I think that's fine. We can see that there's been some benefit there. But then to say that he has been a snitch, also, as you said, I just want to make sure that we know we have evidence for that. We really can say that. I know he's annoying as heck, and he does push. Even George said it today. He's relentless. He bugs you and bugs you and bugs you and bugs you and bugs you until you finally say, yes, I'll do something. Just don't, because you're calling me 24/7. And yes, at odd times of the day even. And so I just want to make sure that it's not just a thing where he's just annoying and has, some mental health problems, or that he has specifically, purposely been gathering information. I mean, how many other prisoners have been moved 17 times?
Right.
What I'm saying. So I just want to be really clear about this, because people are going to go back and watch this. And I don't want to do what Vivo did, where he, only softballed Jake Lang, didn't ask him exactly what needed to be answered. And so I want to ask you, and I know you're up for it, Tim, because the truth, you can't get it. So you see what I'm saying? When people come back to me and say, why didn't you ask Tim about this? Or how can you just blanket Jake Lang like this? He's changed, he's grown, he's a godly man. I can't even tell you all the things I've heard the last 24 hours. So
it's very it's very godly to say that Jesus was invented by the Romans. Yeah. Here's an 11-page report that what do you want to call it? A testimony written by the guys in the DC jail, talking about the infiltrators in the jail. And on the last page, you can see their signatures. All right. And I really was a union rep. Trust me.
Your documentation of your time in there is unbelievable. And that's why I think Jake is on this little tour right now, this explanation tour. So
it's complete damage control, but suffice to say, ask the Oath Keepers. He tried to get the Oath Keepers to confess to seditious conspiracy. What kind of person would do that? I'm a proud seditionist. What about you? He tried to get people to sign documents advocating the overthrow of the government. He actually literally was talking outside of Ken Harrelson's cell about cooperating with Ronald Sandlin. I mean, a lot of this, I'm sorry, you can feel free to take it with a grain of salt. Yeah. But
well, his rhetoric has been over the top like this for a while. That's initially why Derek and I severed ties with him and hadn't had him on since we did originally, which is probably close to a year ago now. And even then, we made sure that interview was pre-filmed. As all you guys know, this show is normally live. But Derek and I had a couple off-air conversations. We were like, well, one, Derek can't appear with him because as condition of his release, when he signed the plea agreement, he can't hang out with known felons or people that have pending felony charges like Jake Lang. So that was always planned. But our big thing was we couldn't trust what this guy may or may not say on air after doing several Twitter spaces and other things with him, where sometimes he was fine. Other times it's the federal redcoats calling for revolution, calling people calls to arms, essentially. And this is real dangerous rhetoric. This is how people get their doors kicked in. And we didn't want to have anything to do with that. And again,
that's
initially,
what it was like all the time.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Ahead.
That's what it was. That's what it was all the time. Revolution, say her name, Roxanne. He didn't even know Roseanne's name. First of all, he didn't mention her for 3 months. Then suddenly he started calling her Roxanne and mentioned her. He would give these Braveheart speeches, and we get locked down. And I'm like, I'm sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
He said on Vivo last night that he cradled her. I wrote it down. He cradled her in his arms while she was dying. He said that on Vivo last night. Is that true?
No. And it's funny because, like, in terms of like division, we don't really need to expound upon. Like, there are people who actually did try to, like, who were in that area, and they did way more to help Roseanne. And so, I mean, I saw that. I think in one of those streams, actually, I think it was actually earlier today with George or whatever. You saw Sarah McAfee being like, "Jake, stop lying and saying that Roseanne died in your arms." He used to scream that stuff in the jail. He'd be like, "Roseanne died in my loving, patriotic arms." And we're looking at this guy like, what? And there's people that were really there in the same area as him. You have Jeff Sable. You had, you had people who were really in there, and they were in, again, the fight for their lives. And it's just kind of like, it's gross, actually. Marjorie Taylor Greene, God bless her soul, she's one of the few politicians that actually came into the jail to see how we were doing. And we're trying to show her the video. Jeff Sable runs to his room, he gets the discovery, and he tries to show Roseanne dying, whatever. And all you can hear is Jake going, "Look, that's me." And then we're just like, bro, like, I mean, it's totally. And keep in mind, he tried to cover up that Zach Alam, the guy who got Ashley Babbitt shot, the Antifa dude, he tried to cover up that he was Antifa. So it's like, how many graves of dead women are you going to dance on, bro? It's opportunism of the worst kind. And again, I admit that I'm a huge internet troll. I love to screw, with cartoons or whatever. I'm a jerk, but I mean, like, it's got to stop. I don't want to be the face of this either. There should be no celebrities out of January 6th, especially not ones that are built upon a house of cards that are all lies. So,
or anybody that's lifting themselves up to become that face. Anybody that has the intention to become the face of January 6th is probably not the person you want speaking for your movement in any capacity.
Right. No, absolutely.
So the biggest problems that people have had, or that I've had, was my husband, again, worked in criminal justice. I kept asking him, how is it possible that Jake is able to call and text and send all this stuff over and over and over? Yesterday in the interview with Vivo, it was very obvious that a toilet flushed during the interview. Okay. And
I wasn't going to say anything, but
he tried to say someone was standing behind him, wanted the phone. That's what he said, to cover the sound. And obviously we all, listen, it was a toilet flushing. Okay. That's all I know. I don't know where the phones are in that jail.
I'm not trying to tell any tales out of school here, but whether it's jail or prison, they usually don't put the phone cord right next to the John. I'm not, not trying to be controversial, God forbid.
Yeah. But. Well, that was a huge question. There was never any break on the phone call. The phone call went on and on and on. There was never any interruption by, the recording that you would normally hear. My brother's been in prison. I know what you're talking about with that when they get on the phone with you. Yes. Nothing. That's never been the case. He himself said he's conducted over 700 interviews while being in jail and never experienced what you or any others have. When he's asked hard questions, he constantly deferred to Jesus and just basically said, "We have divine protection." He would not answer how he's getting this done.
The bat materialized in my hand. God provided it.
Yes.
Yeah.
He did. It was material. The bat. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's watch can we play the videos? Because again, the image that the reason that I'm on here with you, Michael, also is because I have been presented with this angelic Christian who just was at January 6th and now is wrongfully being imprisoned, held captive for 4 years now. I did not know that was by his own choice. He's never said that until he was never forced to admit it until yesterday. Number one, it is by his own choice and his own doing that he is still sitting in the jail. And the longer he stays in there, as you see with every headline, I've been imprisoned for 4 years now, wrongly, all of this, they are raising money off of that. Now, people can speculate the morality of all of that because he says the money's going to all of these cases. Okay. But the reality is he's chosen to be there. This is not the government working against him and holding him hostage there. That is a really big point to just the everyday person. Okay. He's chosen to be there. He has unique opportunities that nobody else has. And the experience that you had with him in the jail is nothing like the face that we see out in the public at all. This really godly person who's just very calm and collected and pulled together and just, love, love, love. Let's unify. Let's unite. That's not the same person that you saw in the prison, is it?
Yeah, no, he wasn't pushing for unity when he was trying to write NPR articles about me before my trial. Still
NPR.
I still haven't really gotten over that, but yeah.
I don't blame you. Well, I've got the Swinging for the Stars video queued up, but that's again what gets me is there's just so much about this that doesn't add up, like the phone calls, because all of us know that any of us that have interviewed anybody else, that's whether they're in prison, they're in Gulag, or in the Gulag, or wherever, we can get them to do a phone call. It has to be scheduled in advance. It's, what is it, 10 minutes or is it 15 minutes the limit before you hear the little thing come on, and then that call is gone. They give you the 1 minute warning, you got to get out of there. He's the only person I have interviewed in the jail where that time doesn't seem to be a restriction, where, we've had him on Twitter Spaces for hours at a time. We did I think it was 30 minutes straight. We had him on here, and I know other people, again, before I knew all this, when I was sending his contact information to other creators, other influencers out there, that, he was doing full 1 hour segments. There was no drop, no callback, no anything. I also know that he dialed into shows on apps from the prison that he's joined by, maybe not Skype specifically, but I know he's joined off apps before. So how is that being coordinated? How is he getting access to that? Again, this sinks all the way around. Let's run this video before I go off on another tangent here real quick. With Jake Lang swinging for the stars.
Can you just give me a brief of what happened, man?
One round's good, but maybe.
Oh, I had a steel baseball bat, fucking swinging for the stars.
Bro, can you give me? Do you know his name?
He's a fucking hero. Yeah. Did the right thing.
To quote my children, that is cringy.
Pretty bad.
He's the worst actor I've ever actually. I don't think you could find a more obvious provocateur. He's worse than Ray Epps in my opinion, because I synced up this video, and when it's of you had this leftist journalist who was there in the tunnel with a camera recording everything, cool, and I synced it up with some of the CCTV, and it's like he's saying it's like he has these goggles on, and then he's like, come on guys, what the F are we doing? And he takes his goggles off, he's like, I can't even see, let's go. And it's just it's just insane. It's the dumbest. I mean, I'm sorry, he's a nice lady, but
is there any chance, seriously, I just want to ask this one more time to make sure that I asked this, is there any chance that this is just he has some, the fact that he's going and going and going all the time, is it possible that there's just mental health issues, or do you really believe that he is an asset in some way?
I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I think it's actually, if I'm being honest, it's consistent that it's very common for both of those things to be true. So Tom Civic was on all kinds of medication, and he was bragging that he was working with the FBI and snitching on his co-defendants. And then he sexually assaulted a bunch of dudes. He ended up in the hole, and then he got bond a week later for writing a letter disavowing Trump. So, I mean, it's not uncommon, actually. Troy Smocks, if you want to say he's a pathological liar, like he's got something wrong with him, where he wants to keep doing the stolen valor stuff, okay, but he's still snitching. So whether you want to say that it's because they're vulnerable, because they're desperate, because they don't care, because they're amoral, I don't care. If my friend is getting snitched on by you, and he's going to do 8 years, 10 years, whatever, and you're going to get a slap on the wrist. Nathan DeGrave basically walked out of jail. And that's another thing. We could address that, where his co-defendant Ronald Sandlin said that DeGrave got caught in a drug conspiracy in 2020, and that's why he was really at the Capitol. And again, I heard it, but you don't have to take my word for it. You can take the other guys in there, the guys who had real jobs, who weren't trying to be famous, the guys who were blue-collar workers, the guys who were veterans, the guys who were actual Trump supporters, the guys who weren't there with camera crews, the guys who, even if they made bad choices, are actually decent people and worked on their cases. And this is a common thread. Those of us who really worked on our cases, who reviewed video, worked on case law, and actually were not doing interviews for 3 years straight, we're the guys who get screwed. And then you got the ones who are trying to be famous, who are trying to be these messianic David Koresh figures. You know what I'm saying? They get millions of dollars in their bank, and hey, I mean, it doesn't matter that someone's trying to start a a militia, and then that ends up getting up in someone's paperwork. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sorry, but like, this isn't even my opinion at this point. It doesn't even matter at this point if it's malicious or if it's incompetence. He's actually in someone's case law, and not this case law, it's in his paperwork that a militia he tried to start ended up getting some other dude is in his paperwork. So, I mean, like, again, whether you think he glows in the dark or whether you think he's just an amoral, selfish man-child, totally irrelevant at this point.
Exactly.
I mean, how many?
Just the way that people are covering for him, though, the way that they're explaining away all of these idiosyncrasies that we're talking about, and then the outright bizarre stuff that doesn't make any sense. And then the fact that Kyle Seraphim, who actually knows what he's talking about and has definitely earned a spot at the table, is not being acknowledged for the things he's saying and the expertise he brings to this whole thing in identifying Jake. It's really interesting to me to watch people I really respect shrink back from this. They don't want to call this out for what it is. But my point has been, you guys are getting out of prison now. Those of you who spent time with him and got to see the real, quote, Jake Lang, you guys got to see who he really is, what he's been all about. I want to talk a little bit about this battle with Patriot Freedom Project. It's the only Trump-endorsed organization that has seriously been helping the families of those who have who's the fathers, the main providers, are now sitting in prison, and they need help desperately. And Cynthia Hughes stepped in, created this organization. She's been audited twice. She's got a very clear money trail, and Jake Lang has gone after her. What was all of that about? Why did that even happen if she's helping the J6ers? What was this little fight that was going on with Jake Lang and her? Because he called her out on Twitter yesterday, saying he was going to come clean on these interviews. And he never said anything. And then they never asked him anything either. They never asked him at all about what he was talking about going after Kyle Seraphim and Cynthia Hughes.
Right. Well, honestly, like, that's actually part of a pattern where it's like, it's all talk, no action. It's just like, oh, we're going to, and then just move on to the next grip. As a small aside, like, he used to try to steal people's artwork. So, and not just Bill Shipley's, but he tried to get me to design these like Pokemon cards based on January 6th defendants called Patriotmon. And whatever. And it's just like, but he forgot about it. So he left me like the outlines, and I was supposed to draw the characters or whatever. He went from me, and then he brought it to Jess, then he brought it to Jessica Watkins. She was like, no. He brought it back to me, and then he forgot it, and then just moved on to his next scam. So don't be surprised if he doesn't follow up on, when he's running his mouth. But the thing is,
and Bill Shipley sued him, right? Bill Shipley sued him for stealing his artwork.
I'm not aware of that. I don't know if that's true, but I mean, I just put up you can literally like go on Twitter right now and you'll see like one and the other. It's literally not even, it's not even fair use. It's straight up a lifted design. It's the exact same design. He just changed the name of the website.
That certainly fits a known pattern for Jake Lang, stealing content, stealing designs, and then trying to profit from it.
Yeah. So, I mean, as for PFP, like I don't represent Patriot Freedom Project, but I do support what Patriot Freedom Project does. And I'll say this real quick. I always say that, but it's never quick. But it started out as a support group. It was like Zoom calls with family groups, or like a family support group. People, like, the families would call in every week and they would just support each other or whatever. And then eventually it became like an actual charity. And, behind the scenes, like, and this is 2021 still. Yeah, I mean, there was constant efforts to sabotage from behind the scenes. And this is like, again, this is like maybe we don't need to get into the weeds of all this, but as for Lang and how it impacts him, because it's the same pattern as always. Tom Civic, John Mellis, and Jake Lang, single, childless rats, were the ones who thought that they deserved all this money that was supposed to go to support kids and wives.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm straight up. I'm a bum. Like, I don't have kids. I don't have a wife. I lost my apartment, but that's not. I didn't have a mortgage. I have a truck. I am okay. I didn't really push my give, sing, go like some people did, and it's because I knew that there were this guy next to me over here, with 3 kids and a wife, who's going to lose his house. Like, maybe he needs a donation a little bit more than me. So Patriot Freedom Project was actually supposed to actually help. That's why it was supposed to be a real charity. And even before Dinesh D'Souza, even before the first check cleared from Dinesh D'Souza. You had these dudes. I was in a quarantine because I went to my first in-person court hearing. So I had to quarantine for like 10 days. They put me all the way on the second floor in the corner, and these dudes are on my door like, so what about that money, man? Are we going to split it all evenly? I'm like, why, dude? You have no responsibilities in life. What are you talking about? You know? And I'm not like Karl Marx, to each according to their, but it's just like, it's a charity, bro. This is not a piggy bank. And so like eventually you get all these competitors that pop up out of nowhere, and they're all trying to do the same thing as PFP. And again, we don't need to get into all that, but it's just like, I ended up becoming a target because of PFP, and PFP became a target because of me. And it was just like this snowball. And so my family's getting harassed for just trying to do the right thing. And I just can't get, like, every day, I'm just like, I just have in my ear every day. I got to worry about what they're putting out about me, what they're feeding the prosecutors, what lies they're making up about me. Like, it's bad enough what they already accused me of. But like now, like, I have to worry about some family of a defendant I never even met thinking that I'm Satan.
Well,
and it's like, I'm sorry, I got no sympathy for this dude. He did this to himself. I took a lot of hits from this guy, and now he unblocks me after he unblocks me, and now we need unity. It's just like, it's not just me. He'll say, it's not me. I'll probably say a little bit more than anybody else is willing to say, but it's not just me, and it's not just PFP. You have all the other groups now that have formed that are saying the same thing. You got the family. You got the family of Ashley Babbitt or whatever. I guess they don't. I didn't even know there was an issue there. But Jerry Perna speaks out against him. I don't.
Yeah, I did text Mickey and ask, "What's your relationship with Jake Lang?" She said, "None." Do you like him? No.
Well, I want to highlight something real quick here too, Tim. Is before we have anybody come on, you always ask if there's anything you guys want to promote or anything like that you want to help highlight while you're on the platform here. Well, normally we'll get people give us an organization or whatever, but instead you picked a J6 defendant, Lance Lagaki, and I apologize if I am mispronouncing that. And you said, why don't we highlight his Give, Send, Go? He and his family haven't had a lot of luck raising money. They're only a few $100s into this. It's been up for a little while. So you picked somebody else, unrelated, somebody you didn't even know, and you wanted to highlight what he was doing. And I know this is really small on the screen, guys, and unfortunately I didn't get this in time to put the link up, but I'll tweet it out after the show here. But if you guys want to donate to him and his family, it's GiveSendGo/GC34D. With somebody that could use the help. But yeah, again, you could have chose to highlight your aunt's organization. You could have highlighted your own, but instead you picked a random J6 defendant you didn't even know that you thought needed a hand, and you wanted to give him that opportunity. So if you're watching this right now, guys, and you've got $5, please help this guy out, because it looks like this has been up for a little while. He's only raised a few $100s, and it sounds like him and his family could really use a hand right now. Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
No, you're right. Like, I don't even know the guy. I don't even know the guy. Like, I think I could be wrong.
I was a little surprised. I was a little surprised when you told me that. I thought I misheard you.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I don't. It's just weird because, like, with PFP, one of the biggest attacks from the grifters is, there's no transparency. Like, there's years of tax returns, but okay. I'm accused of secretly controlling it and being nepotistic and controlling like who gets help or whatever. It's not true at all. And it's like, okay, well, I could say, hey, Pete Schwartz, he got sentenced to 14 years. I was good friends with him. Like, if things don't go his way with the appeal or with the election or whatever, that is a dude who's, I want to speak this into existence. His parents are very old. He might never see them again. All right. And it's like, I don't know. Like, he's a traveling welder, like he lost his house. He lost his wife, like these are real people. These aren't like snotty kids in their 20s who, decided they wanted to be Superman. And even if someone made mistakes that day, they don't deserve to lose the rest of their life. Pete Schwartz is already middle-aged, Jose Padilla, I love his family. His kid, like his son, one of his sons is a really strong meme game. He's very funny, but
he'll go far in life.
They live in the South, and Padilla is in Michigan. And so it takes hours and hours and hours and hours and hours for them to be able to see him. And it's not easy. And,
Of course.
These are real dudes, These are real dudes. And, you got all these people trying to get famous off of January 6th. And it's like some people can't even, they lost their lives. You know what I'm saying? You got veterans or whatever, like these are people who maybe it whatever. It's like, like you deserve, a pat on the back for that or whatever. It's like, I would say a third of the people I was locked up with, most of my closest friends were people who had served in uniform. And I'm not Rambo. I was a reservist. I was a clerk. I was an administrator. I worked at a desk. But, a lot of us, the biggest kick in the balls was that we wore uniforms for our country and we were called terrorists.
Yeah. And
so, the Oath Keepers, Ken Harrelson just got out. Thank God he's with his wife, Angel. And I'm happy for him. But Jessica Watkins, she got 8 years. I think that if the 1512 gets tossed out, she'll be resentenced, and I hope she'll get time served if Meta is merciful enough for that. But then Kelly Meggs got 12 years. 12 years. Like, the Oath Keepers helped the cops, and nobody gives nobody cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Proud Boys, there are some interesting elements there, but a lot of those dudes were just dudes, Billy Cressman's most affable person I've ever met. He's harmless,
right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People made mistakes or whatever. Like they lost everything. You got people. I don't even know what else to say besides this is the most despicable thing. For 3 years, I had to shut the hell up and just keep my mouth shut so I could get through my case, and just deal with the attacks nonstop. Nobody gave a damn about my side of the story, and nobody gave a damn about the dude next to me, who's spent his whole life as a as a welder, or the guy over here, Dan Caldwell, who worked at a microchip factory. Nobody cared about Jeff Sable, the geophysicist. Nobody cared about that dude. Nobody cares about these red-blooded Americans. Nobody gives a shit. Or excuse me, nobody cares. Nobody cares. They care about these man babies with no responsibility who will look into a camera and say, I'm the hero.
Yes.
I'm not a hero.
That's
And they'll say, oh, well, I did this to save this person. A lot of people did. Like, I'm going to say something. I might get fired from whatever angle. Okay, like, one of the things that I'll just say it. I don't care. Shane Jenkins tried to help Philip Anderson too, not just Jake Lang. Why is it always one person that's the hero of the story? You know what I'm saying? There were a lot of people trying to help Roseanne Boylan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it's I'm sorry, it's not infighting. There's no, like, if we were really on the same side, then we wouldn't have gotten to this point. And so
Agreed.
I don't care. I have no sympathy for him. This is a guy that when he was my cellmate and he was trying to entrap me, when they knew that they were accusing me of being a neo-Nazi, he kept trying to get me to talk about Hitler every night as my cellmate. And I still gave him every food tray I had because he was a skinny runt, and I didn't want him to fuck. It's just it doesn't matter. It's just there's so many knives I had in my back. Once by the time I got out of prison, it's just I look. You said my life is hard. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, but I'm a man. I'm a grown adult. A lot of people have hard lives or whatever. So, but because of that, my guard's never really been down. January 6th might have been an exception because I went a few days without sleep because I worked overnights. So that plays in a little to why I react the way I did to what I was witnessing. But
I want to ask you about the connection that you're making, and Michael, let me know if we're getting close to time, but the connection that you're making with President Trump and how this ongoing rhetoric of insurrection. And I listened to Jake Lake last night again say that, yes, he was there to take over the Capitol. He kept saying, we were there, we were there, we were there. He's lumping himself in with who, I don't know who he's lumping himself in with, but other people, definitely trying to make it sound like that's what they went to do, was to overrun the Capitol. And there's rhetoric in there that people can agree with, as far as like, the tree of liberty must be cleansed from time to time. I live in Texas, and Texans don't mess around. They've got a lot of rhetoric, and
I said that.
Yeah.
I said that on NCIS had my roommate wear a wire on me, and they caught me saying that while I was drinking a little in my house.
Well,
so I get it.
The drone's head on me.
It's rhetoric. Yeah. But 3 years later, when you're still saying I'm a revolutionary, it is what it is, and it's obvious.
What is the Trump connection there? Because you said, I think you make a good case for this, that I want people to really hear this and understand. When you're continuing this rhetoric and you're trying to put Trump at the helm of that, explain that to us in a way like my simple mind can understand.
It's not even that he's saying Trump told him to do it, because I'm not even going to say that. It's the fact that we've all got issues when it comes to the question of optics or whatever.
Yes.
But it's like I said, my greatest regret wasn't even losing years of my life. I lost 3 years of my life and I feel 10 years older. My body is destroyed. But my greatest regret is that they used us as a weapon against Trump. It's like I said, those Sandlin and DeGrave were the first defendants to have the 1512 upheld in court by the judges. And those are the guys who said that they were there to get out of trouble for stuff that happened before it. So the first defendants to have the 1512 upheld in federal court were federal informants. And that's the charge not just being used against us, but against President Trump. And it's just like, does anybody see what's going on here? And so it's just like, they're trying to destroy President Trump. And I don't want that. And I just wish things could have gone a different way. Like, I didn't plan for what happened to happen. And so we all talked a lot of crap, I think, and that's what hurt a lot of us after the fact, because we were pissed.
Right. A lot of it is rhetoric. Right.
We walked into a trap. The election was stolen. We all know it. We were mad. We were, to an extent, a lot of us were coping after the fact. We're like, but when 3 years later, you're still saying we're going to get them, the redcoats, the red coat, Gestapo, both communists, and it's just like, he's not a big history guy. I was a history major.
All his little trigger word phrases he likes to throw in there to organize his talking points. But that's the dangerous part. And you're both right, that essentially trying to tie Jake Lang's rhetoric to President Trump is one of their goals right now. They need this narrative in the forefront that Trump is dangerous, that he has this army of mindless supporters that will just do whatever he says, and that there'll be a literal revolution if he when he wins the election in 2024. They want that narrative. They want to gin up fear any way they can. So their base panics, and they want more excuses. They want more arrests from the feds. They want more of these show trials at the DOJ. They want more arrests, and unfortunately, some of us are playing into that, like Jake Lang. He's hoping to build up that narrative. And he can only do more harm and more damage in the position that he's in right now if people keep platforming him and if they don't know the real story with what's going on.
Yeah. There was an excellent tweet just kind of bringing all this together today that really helped me to understand what this bigger picture is. We know that they're continuing. I mean, Jenna Griswold does not stop. She's not going to stop. They're going to find a way. They are full of ideas, but all they really need is one idiot who runs his mouth on Vivo's show to record that and blast it out in Congress and say, this is why he must be removed from the ballot. This guy clearly believes that it's his job, and whoever we is that stormed the Capitol that day, not only does it blanket all of you again, those who the Rebecca Lavrenzes and the Tim Hales of the world, but it also calls into question anyone who supports President Trump. We already know about the agave list with the FBI, and we already know that they're adding more and more people who are just Trump supporters because of that kind of nonsense that Jake is saying, and he's not backing away from it, and he's doubling down on these interviews saying the exact same thing over and over and over again, and then claiming he has no fear but that he's being restrained from having a trial when it's him that's saying he doesn't want one yet.
The narrative again, it's like when it comes to narratives, there's always a question like, well, are we gonna fight for our right, or are we gonna bend the knee or whatever? But like, that's not really what this is. This is really about, this is like a meta issue, actually. If look, I think we need to have like a consensus. If there's really a January 6th community, it's a non-starter if anybody is saying that President Trump forced them to go and do what they did.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
I went to hear a speech. I followed people to what I thought was going to be a protest. Before I showed up, barriers were knocked down, and a lot of people didn't know that. But, in terms of anything that happened after that point, President Trump made it very clear we're going to peacefully protest. He sent tweets out. He made videos. I think one was removed from Twitter, actually. He said, go home. He also said, live in peace. He said, I know you're upset. You should be, but, and so, respect law enforcement. And it's just, this was always a conundrum for the people in the jail. We were like, okay, we're mad about January 6th, but why are the people always trying to incite the guards here to attack us? It's like when I was being moved by the marshals, and it's me, Mike Curgio, Pat McCoy, Jeff Sable, and Lang. It's the 5 of us. And one of us is always trying to incite the cops against us. One of us is always trying to get us basically shot. Why? Circumstances of January 6th aside, if Trump supporters are really back the blue, and this is the bizarre nature of January 6th and why the insurrection narrative is not true, is that it makes no sense for people waving thin blue line flags to attack the cops for no reason. I'm not justifying anything that happened to the cops. But I also believe, I believe that we need to find some nuance here. I'm not trying to be the leader of January 6th either, but I think there should be some nuance. There should be some kind of consensus. Not everybody in the crowd was good. Not all the cops were bad. Not all the cops were heroes, and not everybody in the crowd was nefarious.
Right.
It was very complex. You had a lot of moving pieces. You had agitators. You had plants. You had incompetence. You had all kinds of things. And I really think the messaging going forth really needs to be on point, because we're going to screw this election up. And again, a lot of people don't have faith in the elections as it is. I remember Trump, I'm locked up listening to this little tiny radio, and he's like, we can't talk about 2022 or 2024 until we get to the bottom of 2020. And it's like, yes, nobody gets it. But that being said, this is really, I feel like this is the last chance. And if we have people who are deliberately going out saying, we went in there and I don't know if you it's just
absolutely.
I mean,
it's
the quick
suicide.
version is, anybody with 2 brain cells to rub together should know that you guys were, the vast majority of people that were there to listen to Trump speak, to protest and have their voices heard. There was clearly no organized plan to take the Capitol or anything else, or you guys are the dumbest insurrectionists on earth to show up at this giant event with no weapons whatsoever. None of it adds up if you listen to the narrative. Again, yes, there were certainly some. There were certainly a few bad people in the crowd, some agitators, probably mostly feds. There's probably some other people that got out of control, whatever. But the biggest conspiracy, there are a lot of big questions that need answered about January 6th. I still want to know who opened these magnetic doors. I still want to know who was giving orders on the radio. How come certain things seem to have been staged and have happened at certain times where somebody was giving signals for them to move forward? How come nobody's really pursued this guy that was firing the gun up on the scaffolding? There's a lot of things like that we don't know. We do need a real investigation. But there certainly was no plan. You guys, by and large, certainly were not there to foment any kind of violence, to overthrow the government or anything else. But we can't talk about it honestly, because even then, the real reason that everything's been this way is they wanted to lock us all down in fear. They wanted to send a message on January 6th that any other patriots organized anywhere, held any rallies, held any events, or even supported Trump, that you're going to be treated the same way. You're going to be treated as if you're an insurrectionist, that you're some white supremacist piece of garbage, and that needs to be taken off the chessboard. And this is what they've tried to do for 3 years now. We're rolling into another summer. I'm betting they're going to up the number of arrests. They're looking for people right now, I'm sure, to plaster all over the news, to tell the rest of the country yet again how bad all these people were that were there on January 6th, and how if Trump gets in, that we're going to devolve into a third world dictatorship with him at the helm and whatever. That's what they really want out of you and everybody else there right now.
Sure. There's this argument from silence that really, until people really made a big deal about Ray Epps, damn well he was never going to get charged.
Right.
The problem is that there's a lot of Ray Epses. And so whatever happened to Megan Paradise, I think she was like Adam Carolla's niece or whatever, turns her phone over to the FBI, nothing happens. She was doing the same thing on the other side with a bullhorn. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. There are a lot of actors. That dude that Derek Evans found that shot the gun or whatever, he was known to the feds for years.
Yeah, years. Had pending murder charges.
Right. You know, and it's just like, gee, I wonder if it is what it is, you know? And it's like, okay.
Yeah, something doesn't add up here.
Just a little bit. Yeah. And so, what's the deal? Why can't we get a basic answer? And by the way, with regard to the magnetic locks, it's just like there was that CCTV camera that just got released. I saw it on Will Pope's page. It showed the second floor. Actually, yeah, there were actually cops right up there. So, and by the way, I'll say in my trial, one of the head of the Capitol Police was there. This lady, she said that they monitor all the CCTV in an offsite facility. So whenever you see a camera move, you know damn well they're watching it. So kind of letting it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
encouraging it. Even the DC, the Capitol Police saying they set us up. We've heard these testimonies. What my biggest, what I hope that you bring to this whole conversation, Tim, is if there are people actively right now hijacking the peaceful protesters and continuing to spew rhetoric that has nothing to do with the First Amendment, but everything to do with trying to start a war. Like Jake Lang said last night he said it. I listened to the whole thing. I listened to the entire interview. When we have people who've done the right thing, who did not violate, they didn't go there for those reasons at all. But the face of the J6 movement is someone who did and is doubling and tripling down, saying that's why he was there. He would do it again. He doesn't regret anything at all that happened that day, and he never will because it needs to be done. That's what he said last night. Then this is going to be a really huge problem for all of us, not just Jake Lang and what happens to him. So if we find out that he is in fact an informant for real, and he has been doing all the things, which I have no reason to doubt you at all, that you've said, an investigation needs to be opened up on him. And those who really care about the January 6th movement need to start being critical thinkers and not just swallowing up the charisma of a 29-year-old man who says, this is what happened. God divinely, it materialized a bat in my hand. And I believe that was from God. I mean, we got to use our brains and think. We're going to have a lot more people suffering than the ones that you've already listed because of Jake's behavior.
Don't you love that, by the way, he, not for nothing, not that I'm defending him, but don't you love that he scapegoated Josiah Colt?
My gosh, I couldn't believe
this
that.
Guy over here, it's like if you watch the CCTV, he literally sticks his hand out. It is waiting for it. And like, not for nothing, you really think about that. Obviously, there were all kinds of people all over the place. You never know who was interacting with someone that, whatever, they just happened to be there. But a guy who told the FBI he was actually a communist trying to get Trump supporters shot, he's the guy who hands the baseball bat to the guy who was an avowed anarchist. Mm-hmm. So, and by the way, he literally is an anarchist. He pretends to be a libertarian who pretends to be a Trump supporter, but he's an anarchist. He repeatedly.
Well, I think he demonstrated that by saying he's willing to burn the whole thing down. That's what he's willing. That's his rhetoric.
He's not a Trump supporter, to be clear. So when they had the Matt Brainerd's Look Ahead America, or whatever the hell it was, the Justice for J6 thing in 2021, when they held that protest, they locked us down. They moved us to the other side of the jail. And, you had Brandon Fellows moronically saying, yeah, I was there for Antifa goals. And me and Pete Schwartz looking at him like, what? Like, shocking. But then, when they're finally bringing us back, Jake's losing his mind. Oh, Trump's a traitor. I can't believe he told people not to go there. How could he tell people what to set up? He's controlled opposition. Trying to get us to be mad at Trump. And just like, he later on, he said he was mad that there were cops there to control the situation. And it's just like, bro, come on. Can you just chill for one day? One day. That's all, just one day. Just let us have one day. Can we have one? No, it's never.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he tormented you guys pretty heavily while you were all there with him.
Yeah, a little bit. Again, now I'm wondering, like, should I get into the weeds, because then I'll be naming certain people or whatever. But he screwed with a lot of people in there who just, again, like me, I have a very thick skin. I am a troll. I can take it. But for a lot of people in there, like these are a lot of these people, regardless of how they were represented, were very straight-laced people, before they got turned into domestic terrorists. And so it's just like, bro, you got like Dan Caldwell, Jeff McKellop, Jessica Watkins, like every person in there who's just trying to fight their case and get home. There always has to be a grift. There always has to be an angle. There's always a script. Robert Morse got moved out of the jail, and he was close to he was close with Jeff McKellop. And Jeff McKellop is just like, he's kind of bummed about that. So Jake goes up to him. He's like, "Sorry you lost your friend, Jeff." And Jeff's just looking at him like, he's got a tablet in his hand, and Jake's just like, "You gonna use that tablet?" We're just like, oh, we knew it was gonna happen. I'm sorry, it's not even a joke. I literally made a cartoon series about this stuff called The Daily Meme, and I still have some of them. I post some of them because it's just like, I tell people, like, no one, I knew when I was in there, nobody was gonna believe this stuff, but I have receipts, And it's just like, I was an administrator. I was an administrator in the Army. I was a union guy in the for the Navy, and so it's just like, as much as I hate it, as much as I get stuff for it, I was a bit of a pack rat. So I always save. And again, I don't want. Again, I'm not a messianic figure like all these heroes who want to be like the leader here. The dude actually literally told us he wanted to be our class president in the jail. He didn't say class president, but he wanted to be the president of C2B, our pod. And we're just looking at him like, bro, you are a 27-year-old man telling 40 and 50-year-old men that you're their spiritual leader, their spiritual advisor. You are their thought leader. And it was the most backwards thing. And this is what I learned too, though. Like, it's actually not that strange. When I got to prison, I saw a lot of things too, where it's just like, and Pete Schwartz told me this because, like I said, he does have a record, and I think he was judged unnecessarily for it. But when you're locked up, morality is entirely inverted. The people who have done the most disturbing things, the people who've done the worst things, are considered the most wise people. It's just the people who are the most virtuous are the biggest targets. And that really, I think, summarizes what it was like being locked up and watching like regular, like red-blooded Americans getting targeted by meth junkies like John Mellis or whatever. It's just like people who only know destruction and stealing. And and for a lot of people, like, it was not fair. For me, all I had to do was just look at them in the face and smile at them, and they'd have a mental breakdown. But for the average person who's not a troll, it's just like every day. You can't have any peace and quiet. It's bad enough you're in jail. It's bad enough you're hundreds, if not thousands of miles from your family. It's bad enough you can't kiss your child goodnight. But every day you got to worry about getting ripped off by some dirtbag, some dirtbag who stabbed a cop in the neck and then, tried to pretend like they were doing it out of patriotism. John Mellis, a Hillary Clinton supporter, pretending to, like, what I'm saying? Like a guy who hated Trump. A guy who spent the entire summer of 2021 denying there was election fraud. Him and Ronald Sandlin trying to push people into taking plea deals. And if you take a plea deal, again, I'm not judging you for that, but it was very obvious what was happening. And it's just like, at a certain point, like I said, you get more time out of your cell, you start to see who people really are. And it's not that it was infighting; it's that there were different sides.
Yeah. Sean Witzeman posted the audio between him and Jake Lang on Twitter. Everyone can go find it there at Sean Witzeman, WITZEMANN, and go take a listen to this audio. I think another place where I drew the line and thought when Michael said, let's do this, I was on board, because when a journalist is asked to make a correction in order to make somebody look better, not to tell the truth, but to make somebody look better because it might hurt the cause, I tell you, like, all the red flags go up. So the phone conversation is Jake Lang calling Sean from prison, I guess, the jail, and asking him to change his article to reflect Jake in a better light, because another inmate was telling a different side of Jake Lang. And that was a while ago. I mean, that wasn't just a few months ago. That was long enough ago that we could have changed course and not had Jake be being the face of this movement. But I'm just guessing there was just already so much money tied up in this guy and him doing a great job of fundraising? I don't know. I hate to make that assumption, but I'm guessing that it had a lot to do with it. But I think everybody should go and listen to that audio because, again, when we're asking people to violate their conscience, to tell a different story, to make somebody look better than they are by the personal testimony of those who were incarcerated with him, I think there's a problem. We're supposed to be on the side of truth here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll do real quick. Go ahead. There's the saying, never attribute to malice what you can attribute to stupidity. And I get that.
Correct.
Yeah.
But that's not a good dichotomy at this point. So, really the choice is either people are just naive and they don't know better, or they're really messed up. And it's like, neither's a good option. It is what it is. I'm glad I'm not, I don't want to hijack this segment real quick, but it's just like, everybody knew this was going to happen. It's just like nobody wanted to say anything when we were in there because people were like, don't say anything or people are gonna think we're divided. And it's like, we are, because this was a psyop, this was a trap, And so like all the bad stuff, like you had Ronald Sandlin paid Brandon Fellows a sausage to try to steal the signature of Lonnie Kaufman, a 71-year-old Vietnam veteran. You know what I'm saying? Like there was just, why would you co-sign on that? Why would you cover that up? Zach Alam was in the hole with after Jake Lang went to the hole for the third time for trying to incite a riot. He was there for a couple months with Zach Alam, and they both come back, and Jake's like, "Oh, we're like, dude, wait, Zach Alam, I've heard he's Antifa," and he's like, no, he's a Christian MAGA patriot. I searched his soul. And we're like, 5 minutes later, it's like, yeah, he just admitted he's Antifa. He's like, oh, well, I never knew him. You were in the hole with him for months. I was like, this isn't a joke. It's like straight up. It's funny in a messed up way. Because I have very dark
exactly.
Sense. Like it's like, it's extremely malicious. We tried to warn people on the outside. Like, yeah, there's people in here trying to cover up that there's Antifa. Nobody cared. And yeah, maybe it was money. Maybe it was just reputation. Maybe it was just whatever you want to call it, but there were people who just were not interested in hearing that this dude's Antifa, that dude's a rat. This dude was literally admitting he's working for the FBI. Well, I don't mean like as an agent, but as a cooperating asset. You have this dude over here willing to say he'll testify against anybody. He doesn't care. And it's like, nobody cares. And these are the people, as usual, who get the biggest voices. I'm out now, but in there, the people who got on the Gateway Pundit, John Mellis, Jake Lang. John Mellis, Jake Lang. John Mellis's girlfriend, who he didn't even know, she ended up getting a job working at the Gateway Pundit. So they basically, the rats in there could publish anything they wanted. And
that's
so for 3 years, like you had to beg. Meanwhile, we're getting accused of not having transparency, and it's like, you have a vehicle to say whatever the hell you want. And if somebody wants help from you, you got to go out there. John Mellis used to give people little scripts that they would do on the calls at night that they would do. And it's just, it is what it is.
Wait. On the calls they would do at night, what kind of calls are these? Are these fundraising calls?
When they would do the, what do you call it? I don't know if it was the Freedom Corner. John Mellis was desperate to basically control public perception of what was going on in the jail. And so I feel like he tried to manipulate a lot of the people at the Freedom Corner, who I don't really have anything against, but I think that they were a little too trusting. And it's just, John Mellis assaulted Guy Reffitt. Guy Reffitt had to spend a month in the hole because John Mellis assaulted him under a staircase. John Mellis assaulted Kelly Meggs. This guy is a Trump hating jerk off, and he caused nothing but division in the jail. But he tried to basically tell the world that he was, this truth and light and harmony. And I can't get his voice. It's been so long since I heard his voice. I used to be really good at mimicking him, but it's just like the voice chameleon. We had these things called the Hopium Den, where it was, I think it was Jeff Sable who came up with it, where we would do like these skits to like not be depressed all the time. So we would do like these acting things and stuff like that. And so I used to do routines and stuff. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, I mean, you get people controlling public perception, and it was. I'm sorry, but it looks like Operation Mockingbird. It looks like COINTELPRO. You can call me, whatever, but that's what it is. To me, it's infiltration, agitation, and co-opting. And
Yes.
I don't care what the name of the program. I don't care if there is officially a program. You got a lot of people who are doing things, unofficially anyway. So I mean, I was listening to what Seraphin was saying the other day. Like, I don't disagree. Yeah, maybe we throw the word "fed" out too liberally, but yeah, CHS, whatever you want to call it, there are assets, cooperating assets, and nobody is interested in finding this out. And I just,
and they're not going to be. The narrative's the narrative. I think there's too many people in the mainstream, especially, that don't want the truth, and unfortunately, there's people on our side that don't want the truth either. It's easier to keep this fake story alive and keep people in the lanes they're in now than to have a sudden shift and cause people to look at something a little bit deeper. I know we've already gone way over on time, and I don't want to keep both of you longer than you can stay here. We're already 40 minutes past the normal time for this show.
There's so much.
Yeah, well, that's kind of, I didn't want to interrupt, but I know we're gonna have Cynthia on this Friday. We're gonna have to get you back on again to go through more of this. And Sharona, again, I want to say thank you for joining me here tonight. Real quick before we end things, I want to give both of you an opportunity. Sharona, first, where can our audience find you?
Oh yeah, every social media platform. You can find us: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're still alive and kicking somehow, and americasmom.net. Also, you can catch us on Lindell TV, 2 p.m. Central Time, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. And I thank you again so much, Michael, for this is the other side of the story that needs to be heard. It's what sent Jake into a tailspin the last 48 hours after I spoke with him and let him know that I was going to be partnering with Patriot Freedom Project, because it is Trump endorsed, and they've done an audit. Several audits, and I want to support families, and I'm very frustrated to see that we're going to continue to prop up people who just can't deliver. It's not right. It's not right what's going on here. So Tim, thank you so much for being on here, and for the 3 years that were stolen from your life, and then having to get out and deal with all this nonsense. I can't imagine how just that sickening feel when you know somebody and you know who they really are, but then you see the world adoring them and you can't figure it out. I know what that feels like. So thank you for coming on tonight and just letting us walk back through this. I guess we'll see what tomorrow brings, but Michael, thank you so much. And of course I send my best to Derek.
Well, and Tim, I also want to thank you for having the courage to actually stand, because you could have said, you know what, I did my time, I'm done, I've got probation to do, and you could have kept your mouth shut, and then nobody would know any of this, and everyone's assumptions would still be what they were, 72 hours ago, or whatever the exact number is. So, again, it takes a certain kind of person to do the right thing, especially when there's potentially going to be major consequences.
Yeah.
So thank you. And Tim, where can everybody find you?
I'm on Twitter. You can find me at Tim Hale, criminally funny J6er, and it is Lewis of Monmouth, right?
Yes.
Support Patriot Freedom Project. Keep tabs on the latest defendants to see who's in need. And I'll say this was something that always kind of bothered me. Is like, there are a lot of people who there's a lot of people, and I find that it's unfortunate. Maybe it's just a reality of life. A lot of the people who need the most help get completely looked over. And so maybe, I'm not saying pick favorites or whatever. I'm saying actually the opposite. Try to because I could have gone on here and said, yeah, all my friends that I know are rotting away, go support them. And I actually feel dirty not saying that, actually. But think about all the other people. There's a lot. There's a lot of inmates, a lot of defendants, even if they're not incarcerated. You got people coming up for sentencings, coming up for trial. Just shop around, I guess. I don't know how else to say it, but really, really consider the circumstances and who's the most in need, because charity ultimately is about charity. It's not about making everybody comfortable. It's about making sure everybody gets by. So
yeah. And it shouldn't be about propping yourself up and getting kudos from people. A lot of the acts of kindness should be done in secret. You don't need to send a message to everybody else at how cool you are because you donated $20. I want to bring this up one more time though, and again, encourage our audience, if you can afford it, please go support Lance Ligaki. And Lance, I'm sorry that I'm mispronouncing your last name probably, but I'm not a nameologist.
Before we go, can we take
Yeah.
a moment for your shirt, Michael? I mean, really, can we just talk about your shirt?
I like this shirt.
it's very loud.
It's about sending a message.
I'm getting that message loud and clear.
Disavow.
I just like shirts that get me dirty looks when I'm grocery shopping at Aldi's, and not because they're inappropriate or anything else, because they know exactly where I stand. And I like to ruin as many leftist days as I can possibly just by walking around. I like making somebody so upset when they're in the grocery store that they walk away from their cart and they leave without even having to say a word.
I believe that shirt will champion that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I've already more than once gotten dirty looks, questions, or had people just leave when I walk in somewhere. But that's my personal goal in life.
Brilliant.
They want to make life hard for us. I want to make life hard for them. We got to learn to actually fight back and utilize some of the tactics that the left undertakes, or we will never win. Because unfortunately, we try to play nice and play by the rules, and we're dealing with people that have a flexible sense of morality and will do whatever it takes to accomplish their goals. Guys, again, I want to thank you both for joining us here tonight. To our audience, please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to grow this show and grow this channel so we can bring more people the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be back on Friday with Cynthia. Derek will be back with us, and Tim Serrano. We're going to have to get both you guys back on again to go through even more of this. But thanks again, guys, and we'll be back again on Friday with even more.